This is the Team Objection podcast for May 9th, 2019, episode 390. We are 10 away from the big 400, and we are spending this episode... What am I hearing? Why am I hearing a beeping noise? Am I crazy?
I heard that too. What was that?
There it is.
Oh, it's Michelle's Skype freaking out. That's what it is. Well, the good news is the listeners probably hear it too, so they won't think I'm crazy.
Yeah.
They'll think they're crazy.
It's all right. We're starting off our Endgame review with a mystery of our own.
Yes. Who will survive this episode? Odds are at least two of us won't.
Yeah. Bye-bye, everyone.
So we are going to review Avengers Endgame. It's not that big of a secret that it's one of the biggest movies of all time. It's already just smashing every box off record in sight, even adjusted for inflation. It's destroying everything that's and leaving wreckage in its path. We're going to warn you up front. There's a bunch of spoilers here. You know, we were told it's fine to spoil things now, so we're going to do that.
By the directors.
Yes.
It's not our call. It's their call.
It is not.
Michaela, you can't give it a 10.
I wasn't going to.
I just feel like I have to have this conversation whenever you're on a review of ours. I'm traumatized by
fair.
Yuri on Ice. I have nightmares about Yuri on Ice 10
It's
still.
so good.
It is so
it's
good.
still good.
It is.
I mean, it
We
could
need
be
a
really good
season
without
2.
being a 10.
I love it.
Anyway,
Like a 9.5 is a phenomenal
I was
score.
about to launch down a road of how that show is not a 10. I stopped myself. I'm trying to stay focused. I think we have plenty to talk about. I'm ready to fight. With that said, you can't give it a 10, but I'm also ready to fight the naysayers.
I too am ready to fight. I am 2 ounces of whiskey in.
Oh my god, I'm so excited.
And that, yeah.
It's going to come to blows, and I can't wait. I've been thinking about it this week.
I like how I'm doing some weird hand. I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna just put my hands down.
That's probably for the best. Just sit
I've
on
been thinking
them.
about. I went to bed last night thinking about okay, what am I gonna say when Michelle brings up a stupid point?
Oh my god.
So we'll find out.
We had a very short text thread about this. We have not really tipped anybody's hands. I imagine I can guess a couple of spots where the two of them are going to butt heads, and I think I'm going to be on a different person's side for both of them, so this should be fascinating.
Okay. Chris is the swing vote. Michaela, I think, is going to be on my side for most of it. But we'll
Probably.
see. Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll see.
She could turn traitor.
Michelle and Michaela have had some strange alliances in the past that I did not see coming, so I can't
yes,
say.
That's correct.
I like we're setting up our review for like a mat, like it's like a competition.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
it is kind of like Endgame, right? Here we
Yeah.
go.
Yep.
Yeah.
Choose your side. It's more Civil War than this one, but still.
Yeah, it's more Civil War.
There's two
Which,
sides in this movie. There's just, everyone, and then Thanos and his whatever army.
So
Famous,
I actually
famous.
want to start with your issues, I think, because we could go first we're going to talk about what we liked, and now we're going to talk. It's no, I just want to start hearing your issues, and then from that we can it will stem what worked and what didn't work.
I actually like the idea.
Okay.
Reason being, a lot of times we talk about all the good things in a given source of media, and then at the very end we talk about the flaws, and then we give it a score, and the score is usually pretty high. I think it's pretty safe to say nobody's going below a 6 on this. Maybe even a 7 is probably safe to say.
I
would
don't
hope.
know. We'll see.
We'll see. But so the point is, it's kind of dissonant if we start with all the good stuff, backload the best. So yeah, I think that's good. Let's tackle it.
Michelle, I quote, I left the theater struggling to find any one thing I liked about the film. End quote.
Well, and the reason for that is because I didn't really feel like it ended on a note that I personally enjoyed or liked or thought was relevant to the characters in any way. A character. But
Well, don't
we'll
start
get
at
to
the
that
end, though. I gave you carte
Yeah.
blanche to start, but don't start at the end.
I'm not. I said I'm not going to start at the end. And we're not going to start with the obvious one. I want to talk about their treatment of Thor in this movie because I thought it was awful.
Okay.
I thought it
perfect.
was the worst thing they could have done with this character.
I was hoping we would get to this one
I knew
first.
this was one of them.
I thought it was just basically character assassination. They didn't even try to make him sympathetic. They made him sound just pathetic. They essentially mocked his PTSD. They decided fat phobia was fine for this movie, and it was just a complete running joke the whole time. I don't really feel like it was redeeming at all. I didn't think it was funny. I didn't think it was relevant to 2019. It's just very, very
Oh my
amateur.
God. All right. Where do I even start? Because you tackled so I think this is actually a good one though because it gets us talking about characters, and I think definitely there's some interesting ones we can talk about. Professor Hulk I think is really interesting, and we should address that.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's start with Thor. I'll tell you my impression before like trying to directly counter. I thought it was great. I was, first of all, very surprised. I am shocked that like, and maybe I shouldn't be at this point with a Marvel movie. Like a mainstream superhero movie took a character who for a long time his entire identity was built on being strong, being ripped as hell, being like macho, and totally tore that all away. And I thought in fact, I thought it was sort of brave. Like you took a character who his whole identity was one thing, and that's what you established at. And then kind of starting with Ragnarok, we got to see a little more side, like a funny side. And then they just took that and I don't know what you mean about like like to say I disagree is like an understatement.
It was a really insensitive portrayal of his character. I didn't feel like it developed him at all. He was the butt of every single joke. It wasn't.
There was like 2 jokes
It
about
was the same,
about his
it was,
weight.
And
I will
it was
say
done like
also
16,000 times.
But to my knowledge, and I could be wrong, there was one character who kept making fat jokes, and to not have this character Rocket make a fat joke is like out of character for that character.
Okay, so Rocket did, and then there was a really just like the throwaway line by his mom, like "eat a salad."
That
like,
one's bad.
It's not.
I have no
it's
defense
not
for that
good.
one.
If I'm like, again, we're like conflating like you are fat, so you have no self-worth, with if you're super overweight and you're the mother where your son was not this before and is overeating as a consequence of PTSD and depression and kind of self-loathing.
But that wasn't addressed in any kind of sensitive way. And his PTSD was not addressed in any way other than his physical form. And he was just portrayed as pathetic. I mean, Rocket slaps him and is like, get over it, essentially. And it's like, that's not helpful advice to somebody who's going through something like something serious, that his entire like identity is in crisis. It was just like, it wasn't funny to me. I didn't think it was funny. I didn't think it was done well. I really thought that it was just like not anything. I was like, I'd rather him not have been in the movie, to be honest.
I will say, and whether it was funny or not to me is sort of irrelevant, but I will say I saw it 3 times. Not exactly my I wasn't like, wow, I love this so much, I'm going to see it 3 times. It's just the way it worked out. And every time the theater that I was in, the melted ice cream line specifically got the most laughs, maybe in the whole film. Every single time.
I know, and I think that's kind of indicative of kind of an issue here in the United States and how people view people who are overweight. And I think it's honestly kind of shitty that they played into it. And I know people who have been writing about this particular point who they call themselves fat, and so that's how they kind of characterize themselves. And they felt like they were being laughed at in the theater. And like that really, like that hurts. And as somebody who's also like dealt with like, you know, body image issues, like it sucks to see that on the screen and people laughing at the character, not with them. It just felt very mean-spirited. I'm not usually this person. I just think we're being overly sensitive on this one thing, especially when you take a character who, again, their identity was established so hard as one thing, and they kind of flip the script. He's dealing with stuff, so he's overeating. I read an article about how Endgame, to this author's opinion, attacked gaming culture because I've heard about that too.
Because Thor, what is he doing? He's a shitty gamer now who's in his basement, or you know, whatever, equivalent,
talking shit online.
Talking shit online. All he's doing is playing games. There's food, and it's like, or he's super depressed. He's dealing with something, obviously not in a great way. He can't even face it. So he's doing a lot of the symptoms that is real of people who are depressed. Overeating, escapism with gaming.
Yes.
I do both of those.
Me too.
And I don't think gaming is only like when you're depressed, you're trying to escape. But when I'm not feeling well, I like the escapism of just like I sit down and I can zone out. And it was not just gaming, it was TV. It was just it was entertainment in general.
Yeah.
Established in the movie.
I think that's totally fair. And like, I think that's, unfortunately, I think that's where they were going with it, where the directors were going with it. But it wasn't presented sensitively enough, in my opinion. It was every single point of Thor was to be the humor in it. And it wasn't like, we're going to really take his PTSD seriously. We're going to address this. And like, this is a real issue. And you said like the symptoms were real. And we see that, you know, but instead it just turned it around into being a joke. And I just think that was
a joke. I mean, it wasn't just a fat thing. It was like the Lebowski thing. Also a big laugh.
I did like the Lebowski thing.
So it's like,
I did.
You have Rocket, who is himself a little insensitive. I mean, you have people making it. Thor is kind of what I love about Thor is he's one of the biggest badasses of the films, and he's also one of the biggest sources of laughs. And I think that's great.
What I did appreciate is that by the end, he hasn't just like buffed up.
Yes,
he's
and I was going to make that
an
point.
Overweight person, and he just decides to like kind of fuck off and do his own thing with the Guardians. And like, I actually thought that was a really cool way to go about it, because obviously like he's gonna become hot again and all that, whatever. Yeah. But like, I thought I wasn't expecting that, and I will give them credit for that. But I just felt like in general, like the trajectory of his character arc in the film was pretty insensitive, and I just didn't care for it.
You can also make the case that it's part of why they struggle so much against Thanos, because he hasn't just fixed everything. He's still not in phenomenal shape, and he's still dealing with the issues that he hasn't resolved. And that's why when he has all the weapons at his disposal that he shouldn't need to beat Thanos without any stones, he, like everybody else, is struggling.
I think everybody is like over the hill in a way. Like everybody's rusty. Yeah. Everybody... Well, I think we should talk about I have a lot of things I want to say about the finale.
In theory, they haven't been fighting for 5 years.
Yeah.
It's not talked about in any way, shape, or form, other than the fact that you know there's a 5-year time skip because the words take about 15 years to come up on the screen early in the film.
Yeah.
But I think that could also be part of it. And maybe sometimes you can show without telling, and that's a way of doing it, but it did also strike me as a little weird. We'll get to that later. The one thing I'll say that's kind of wrap a bow on this is I am of both opinions on this. I'm all over the place on it. I don't know how I feel about it for sure, because I can see both sides of it, and I agree with parts of both sides. The one thing that gives me pause is, if Thor was female, would they have done this? And the answer to me is an unequivocal no.
Yeah.
Which then creates problems if you can get away with it on a man. Now, that doesn't solve everything by itself, don't get me wrong, but there is zero chance that if this was female Thor from the comics, where like, you know, Natalie Portman's character takes over Jane Foster, they wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole.
Never.
Yeah, and it's interesting to me because it's funny. It's just the way that things work and the way things hit me. I found all the fat jokes in Infinity War about Peter Quill to be sort of like, these aren't really funny, and I find those kind of insensitive. Like, you're one sandwich away from being fat, and then having that be like, it was like there was a back and forth for a long time about like, I'm not fat. Like, it's kind of the thing of like, are you gay? And then so passionately defending, no, I'm not gay. Like, that would be such a bad thing. That's the vibe I got from the first one. And it didn't strike me that way here. Yeah, Rocket is an ass, and he's going to make jokes. I thought were kind of funny. I'm going to be honest. Yeah. I don't know.
I liked it. I liked that it was different, and it took his character in a direction I didn't expect. And I still got the sense that he really was dealing with a lot of things, and he was just coping in a really bad way. And it's not like they made the fat jokes, every time they saw him on screen. It's like, wow, you look terrible. Like, one person says it, and it's Rocket. So it's like, that's kind of a given.
With the mom and the son, like, if I had a son and I left for 5 years, this is time travel. So my analogy is going to be messed up. And they came back, and they were in really good shape before, and they've been eating nothing but cheeseburgers, and like you can, being overweight is fine. Choose the way you want to live, but like, you can't argue that it is more healthy than taking care of yourself. If I'm the parent and I'm like, and eat a salad, as in like, go back to watching what you eat. Don't just drink your calories.
But it's a loaded comment, right? Because fat people hear that all the time, as if that is the answer to all their problems and they're going to become skinny if they eat a salad. It was the choice of that particular wording that was really offensive to a lot of people. If she'd been like, Thor, take care of yourself, it would have been like a really like sweet moment of like actually like, I know you're not caring for yourself right now and I want to be like sensitive. Instead it was like a jab, and like a lot of it struck me as a jab, and it just felt mean.
This is a comment I'm going to present without judgment on it. I saw people who have glandular disorders or other issues that sort of prevent them from having a thinner body with the way that they might like, who generally thought that those moments were still funny, maybe because those were out of their control. And people who could potentially control some of their weight issues, not everybody, but some, were the ones who felt guilty by the jokes. Now, what that means exactly, I'm not even going to attempt to say. But here's the issue I have. If you're trying to show contrast in Thor, who at his peak is essentially perfect, like physically, whatever, like he's maybe the strongest Avenger, blah, 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 you're going to have to tiptoe into something that's going to make some people uncomfortable. You could have leaned into the alcoholism, and then what are people who are alcoholic going to think about it? I don't know what you're supposed to do for the sake of humor without making somebody feel bad.
I don't know if it should have been for the sake of humor. I think it should have been dealt with more sensitively. If you're going into a topic like that, where you're dealing with PTSD,
anything, and then now we start getting into the thing of like what humor is on. I mean, so much humor. The nature of it comes at the expense of somebody, and I think it was mostly tasteful. Okay. That's not a conversation for here, but it wasn't like, all right, and also Thor, you're a fat ass. It was like,
to me, it felt like that was essentially what was in a marquee in the entire movie. I mean, honestly, it made me uncomfortable, and I don't know. That's all I have to say.
All right.
And it made a lot of people I know personally uncomfortable, and that makes me sad, because they loved these films, all 21, however, of them, and then they feel like they're being mocked on the screen, and that's sad. I don't like that.
I think they went to the well too often.
Yeah.
Sure. I just think to walk away and be like, I didn't like this movie. Here's one of the reasons why. They made fun of Thor's weight. I think is like missing the point. I think also there is a lot that you can take away that when you're so busy being offended by the jokes that they made, the fact that, Michaela, you touched on, at the end of the movie, he doesn't just, like, when he transforms.
Shaun, I just said this.
You said it. Yeah, the beard changes. The clothes change. Easily probably could have done a glamour to make him ripped. And they didn't, to your point. So I think there's more empowerment from that than is taken away.
I'm missing the point that I just made because I was offended? I'm getting both sides, Shaun.
No,
I just don't think I don't think that it justified the end result. Like, I do think it was fine that I liked that he didn't return back to his super ripped self. But I don't think we needed all of the mocking tone to get to that point. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
It's kind of weird that Thor became the punchline of everything in the grand scheme of things. There's only a couple other characters. Ant-Man gets his share of guff.
I love him.
Who else really takes it in the chin here? Everybody kind of has a few barbs at each other over the course of the movie, but there's only a couple other characters that really take it on the chin over the course of it.
And in theory, I really love that because, again, he would seem like an unlikely character to be the source of a lot of jokes. I just didn't think it was very tasteful.
In past movies, it's been Drax. Haha, look how dumb Drax is. He doesn't understand axioms. Are we making fun of dumb people? I don't know. I don't know what any of it is. But
yeah, is
it okay to make fun of dumb people because they're not intelligent enough to understand it? I mean, there's a whole other lion's den that we're entering.
Well, he's not dumb. He's like autistic. He like doesn't understand certain like turns of phrase, and he kind of owns it, right? And so it's a little bit. I think it's a little bit different in that case.
And I think I love going back and watching like Avengers 1 and even 2 and the original Thor movies. Is like Thor is so self-serious. There's bits of humor. There's that fish out of water from the first movie where like you get it a little bit, but like he's not really in on the joke. And I love this the new take on Thor where like he is funny. He's looked to be like a source of the comedy and levity. And I love that.
Yeah. No, I I agree. I think Ragnarok was phenomenal for that reason. I saw like actual personality and character, and I was actually hoping for just like a continuation of that, like in kind of the framework of the PTSD, but instead it really didn't feel like he was actually like he wasn't providing comedy. It was like his body was kind of, it was almost like physical humor more than anything else. And I wanted to see more of like his personality being the source of humor and not his physicality, because it's an easy joke. It's a cheap joke, I thought.
All right.
Issue number 2.
I mean,
yeah.
I feel like I don't know why I'm the only one who has issues here. If someone else has an issue they want to bring up, they should, because it just sounds
I'll
like
bring
me
up one
being a
then.
bitch.
Okay, yeah,
And
yeah.
I'll
Go
bring
ahead.
up one that
like-
I'm sure is on your list.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily sure the treatment of females in this woman is great either.
That's not good at all.
You can argue. I honestly feel this both ways, and it's weird because they're somewhat contradictory. I think the shot of all of them together is both cool and extremely ham-fisted.
I agree.
It
It's
is.
bashing you over the head with metaphor that the Marvel movies have not typically fallen for in the past. And it's still
And-
neat to see them all, because you're like, oh, cool, they're all together. But you're like, holy cow, this is so scripted that it feels like painful in a way.
And on top of that, the Avenger, the one Avenger, is fucking dead. So she's not even there. It's like, it's so stupid. I was sitting there, I was just like, this feels so like, hello, women, we're here to support you. Just kidding. Nah. Like, it felt fake.
My
It felt so
takeaway,
fake.
I did not think about that scene that much. My takeaway in the moment was, this is cheesy, but it's neat. And that was about it.
It's lip
It was
service.
cheesy and it was a little forced, because when you think about the logistics, how did that happen
In the
on
battlefield
this
of this
battlefield?
band, the 8
How?
female
Yeah.
characters are all right here.
I don't want it.
I thought
Don't
Infinity
tell
War
me.
did it better. Like Infinity War has a very brief scene in that battle where it's like all the ladies are helping,
Yeah.
but they
I
don't
love
like
that.
spell it out for you. It's
But,
just like, yeah,
you
we're
know-
here to help. We got this. Like that was good.
I
Yeah.
It was a little more
appreciated-
forced.
Yeah, it for sure was forced.
Yeah.
Didn't make a lot of logic sense, but yeah, I forgive it because it's like it's nice and it's neat to show all the women that have been cultivated throughout this series, which I will actually get to in a second. But yeah, it was ham-fisted, but it was cool. And I know a lot of women who were like, yeah, it was forced. I appreciated it. I
Yeah.
appreciated the big final fight with the big three, and they are, and that's how it worked out. They were the first 3 to get, their own movies. I don't fault this movie for the treatment of females as much, and we'll get to the Black Widow thing. We might as well get to it now. But
Yeah, I that's kind of fair.
I fault, if there is fault, and I think there is, it's more everything that came before this movie.
Yeah.
I think this movie
Yeah.
did what it could with the characters that had been established. How many
Yeah.
Avengers is that? You could really stretch it and say 2. If you want to say Scarlet Witch was kind of the new Avenger, they established at the end of 2. Yeah, it's forced. You have 1 female Avenger.
Yeah.
You have 1 solo movie. And I'm glad they didn't force in Captain Marvel. They probably could have, but I understand the want to focus on the original cast. This was their sign off. Captain Marvel is taking them forward, as was addressed by the passing of the torch, aka Gauntlet metaphor, that I thought was maybe there, and then upon subsequent viewings, I was like, that's absolutely what happened there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have 1 Avenger, no solo movies. They were not given a good template, and that I do fault them prior to this movie.
Yeah,
agree
I
with
felt
that.
the studio. Like, why did Black Widow not have a movie before this?
I will say-
I'm kind of baffled a little bit.
Kevin, how do you say his name?
I think
Fiji?
I think it's Feige.
Feige. I always want to say like Phage, because that's cool. And Feige.
That's what I want it to be too. Beige, like beige.
Yeah.
No.
I think to his credit, had he been giving entire creative control, it would have happened. I remember hearing stuff from Bob Iger being like, I believe that's who it was. Like, what was it? It was basically women-driven films have no shot at success, and we're not going to do it. And like, they just don't sell. and obviously he was proven wrong. Thank God that we got the opportunity. But like the point is, for whatever reason you want to point to, they did a really bad job in the beginning.
Yeah, it's probably not the scene's problem as much as the setting. I agree with that overall. Because, I mean, if there's not a whole lot of ways where DC has been ahead of the curve on Marvel, but Wonder Woman is one of them. And it's unfortunate that we still haven't really gotten the female-driven vehicle. Yes, Captain Marvel now, but that came so late in the game that at this point I don't know if you can even count that. So it takes a moment that I think had good intentions. I even think I saw an article where they were talking to the directors about how like we had all these cool female characters. We just wanted to show them off and kind of like celebrate the fact that we had all these. That's great intent, but if you haven't backed it up before that moment... And the other issue, of course, is the power disparity, half of which is created by Captain Marvel. But, we go into this with, like, Captain America, Iron Man, and Thor fighting Thanos. Those are three of the best guys out there. They're all somewhat on par with each other. You can argue who's more important, whatever. This is a cool spread of characters, but, like, I don't know that I really care that Shuri's there. Like, what is Shuri going to do? Like, there's some cool Wakanda tech there. That's fine. I don't really care that Mantis is there.
Well,
it's tough.
Again, the logistics. It's like we'll cover you, and like Scarlet Witch totally can. She basically can, and that's a moment of female empowerment that was done way better. Do you disagree with that too, Michelle?
She's so powerful, and I'm like, where is she?
Yeah.
During the actual fight, I love her, and I wanted so much more of her.
She was Ash for most of it, but
I know. But I mean, when she came back, like she almost single-handedly owned.
She needed
Thanos.
to. Well, if they're being true to the comics, like that's what she's capable of. She is. I was telling Maisie like this should be actually like a good fight. I didn't think it was gonna be that good. I was pleasantly surprised, but she had him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she did.
She made him play like his what do you call it? Like his kamikaze card, like his last ditch effort.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That was cool.
It was.
Okoye, how do you say her name?
Okoye.
Had a great, but I mean, it was great, but it was so brief. She kills like one of the four generals. I don't know if the person she stabs is like the general guy.
Really?
Their fight is like 1 second, and she just runs them through. And you're like, wow.
I guess because you spent so much time dealing with Thanos' quote-unquote army in the first half of this that they just decided, well, now that they're back, we're just going to just end them real quick. Because that probably deserved a little bit more attention. It was a neat moment.
Yeah.
I didn't even notice.
Yeah, he got stabbed and he was dead. But, like, she doesn't have powers as far as we know. She just has really good training and probably some awesome armor from Wakanda. And that was it. So that was cool.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's some really good moments across the board with the female characters. There's only so much you can do with no foundation or very little. Right. So I agree with you, Shaun.
So Black Widow, let's address it because it's probably the biggest point of contention that I've been reading about in the whole movie.
Yeah,
it's just frustrating.
I've been reading a lot about it too.
Now I didn't think it was that bad. So
I didn't either. I'm sorry. I feel like a failure as a woman.
Yeah.
I'm like not having problems
that
most
people have.
You're allowed
to have different opinions.
But like, yeah. So I want to.
So I don't know. I actually I liked it, and I think the thing that makes it like tenable for me is because she had a choice to make that sacrifice, and that's a big theme of the movie of like, what are you gonna give up to save everyone? How far are you going to go? And she absolutely does. And I think it's like, if I compare it to Gamora's death was brutal. It was agonizing because she didn't have a choice. She just got chucked off the cliff and it's awful. And I cry every time. Whereas like
horrible,
Black Widow, she chose. And I mean, it's really sad, but I did like that she like put her life on the line, I guess. I don't know. I appreciated the choice.
I've heard people say that they fridged Black Widow.
No.
Absolutely.
That word needs to stop being used so much.
Yeah,
there's a specific definition for it that is problematic in pop culture.
Mm-hmm.
This is absolutely not that. Stop.
No.
Okay, I'm glad we're not there.
It's a problematic scene for her character, although I kind of agree with you guys that I think it's decent overall, though I don't love it. Or at least I like this scene. I don't love that it's a position they were put into. If anything, I have bigger issues with Nebula in this movie for A, not fighting back more against her alternate version self from 2012 or whatever the earlier part is, and B, not telling anybody what's required to make the Soul Stone and what they're going to be getting into going there.
I don't think she knew, though. She didn't know.
I was thinking about that. I don't think anyone knows.
I don't think
all they know is Thanos went there with Gamora
and didn't come back with Gamora.
and she
That
was
was
dead.
the only thing they knew. I don't think they knew that a sacrifice was required for that. Maybe they should have inferred that, but
Wait.
they didn't actually know. Because
Really?
I had to think about that too.
The
on
only two
subsequent
people went there,
viewings.
Thanos and Gamora.
Yeah, they're the only ones who would technically know that. So I really don't, because
Oh.
I thought about that too, and then I watched it again, and I was like, oh, I actually don't think she knew. She
Now,
couldn't
I
have.
fault
mean-
film logic
Yeah.
by putting the only two characters probably in the entire cast that you could say love each other.
Yes.
And they're the ones that go on. Like, what if it had been War Machine and Nebula?
Rocket.
Yeah, like
Yeah, like they would have been screwed.
so. But you forgive it because I thought it was. What is the moment that's going to have maximum impact with the rules that this universe has established? It's the two of them.
Yeah.
It is.
And that's cool for them. And it's cool that Hawkeye gets to survive it, because it wouldn't have been a whole lot better if he had died there either, if we're being honest. He's already
No.
been cast aside so many times.
Oh,
I just-
I would have been happy.
I guess I'd have to
with
watch
that.
the original fight scene, the really cool fight scene in the first one, where the six of them are taking on Thanos, and he has 4 stones, and they're keeping him from closing his gauntlet, because he talks to Peter Quill about what happened to Gamora there.
he just said
And-
I had to, and Peter's like, no, you didn't.
I don't feel like it's hard to fill in the blanks there, but I'll grant you it is certainly possible.
Yeah.
Was
And some of the
Nebula there
characters
for
who
that
were
too?
there,
Nebula should have been. I mean, you
Nebula
could.
was there at that fight, so was
Yeah.
Iron Man, who
Oh.
survived the dusting, even though most of the characters there didn't. I don't know. That's
Yeah.
it's certainly vague enough that I'll grant you that is a fair point.
It seems like someone should have at least brought up like, be careful when you get there because some shit went down and we don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe
Also,
one
the
line.
fact that they went there and like, oh, they knew to just go up. So it's a planet that they went to.
Yeah.
But they went to like the one mountain. I think there's like a spire. Maybe it's not hard. Maybe it's not a huge planet. I don't know. But I remember thinking like, and you also
They find
excuse it
this.
because they have as much time as they need essentially. So there's a couple things, but I just remember thinking, oh, it's a good thing they found this one mountain on this whole planet.
I know.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know. It just kind of seemed weird, and maybe this was like they were faking the viewer out, but like I saw them building up Black Widow's character to actually be more of like a lead role in the Avengers once, Tony inevitably was going to die. But she kept everyone together over
Yeah.
those 5 years, and I was like, this is her time. This is amazing. Like I was feeling proud. I was like, she's really holding everyone together. She's going to be the one to kind of come out of this as a leader. And then they just like, boom, like he's gone. And it just felt like, to me, it felt like it was, they could have done something better.
So I think in the context of this film, I thought it was, I didn't have a huge issue. I thought it was good. I thought it was a great scene. It was
is
emotional.
emotionally very impactful.
Yeah. I
Yes.
think in the context of the universe, when you only put in minimal effort to establish strong female characters in this franchise, and you kill one, it's a lot more, it's felt. The impact is a lot greater. And so if you're looking forward, like you said, so she could have been the face of it. She could have helped continue to lead it. She's one of 3, maybe 4 strong female characters in this series, and now she's dead. That's 25% done.
Yeah.
That's where I have
It's tough.
it's almost like it's short-sighted, but in the context of the film, it's just one of those. I don't fault it like a huge amount.
She
When it was
had-
happening, I wasn't furious.
She had a good amount of time before that, and I like the idea of her
She did.
basically being Nick Fury going forward. The elephant in the room, of course, is the Solo movie, and it's also part of why I'm willing to reserve some judgment on this.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that they're going to address this in a satisfactory way. I'd like to think this isn't a prequel. If they waited all this time and that ends up being a prequel, to me, that's a huge mistake.
Well, I think so too, because then us knowing the end, it's almost like, why do we care about a prequel?
Yeah.
Right. Well, why would we care where she starts if we already
Yeah.
know
I feel
where
like
it
it
ends?
may be both. Like, Chris, I think we talked about this briefly. Maybe they're doing a prequel, like, sequel, like, Search for Spock kind of a
I
thing.
don't know about that.
And with the Soul Stone in play, you could kind of, like, as she's stuck in limbo or whatever, tell the
Yeah.
story of her beginning and build up to where she's freed. As long as she's the star then, because you don't want to have it be
Yes.
like, all right, here comes Bruce Banner. He's going to look for
Yeah.
her for half the movie.
you can't do Search
do that
for
either.
Spock talk
You can't
centered
really.
on Hawkeye.
Yeah.
Because then that's
Exactly.
Hawkeye's movie.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
So
yeah.
there is a window where this could actually still pay off really well, and you can argue maybe it shouldn't have had to come to that. It should have resolved itself better in this film. If that movie is well done, I'm going to forgive pretty much any flaws that I have with this section, and I don't have a lot to begin with.
Yeah, I agree. I am kind of like holding out on this film because I truly don't know what they're going to do with it. I still think like maybe it seems like the obvious thing. Maybe that would be bad writing. I still think Hawkeye should have done it.
I don't. So I will agree that I wouldn't have cared as much. To me, that's part of the problem right there. Is like, yeah, you're not as invested. He was gone for half the thing, and it would also feel exploitive because he was brought back for a movie almost like to die, so they can check off a box and be like, see, the body count was high. It's like, yeah, that's Hawkeye. He's been gone.
He was
brainwashed.
He was brainwashed for one Avengers movie. He was not in the other one.
He was barely in Civil War. Like,
They
like-
retconned a family for him.
Yes, and then took it away from him.
Though I will say, I thought they did a lot of good work in this film, kind of building up his character. And so I actually thought, like, going into it, knowing they were going to go get the Soul Stone, I thought he was going to go. Like,
well, I
really
did too. And when they do that
Yeah.
scene, I was like, well, this is it.
Yeah.
And when he's running, and I was like, oh, he's gone.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
and then I was like, oh, he's running for too long. This isn't going to be that simple. And it wasn't. But I was like, I remember thinking, oh no, I hope it's not.
Yeah.
I hope it's not Black Widow. I hope it's not ScarJo, and it was. And I was thinking that not because, oh, this is so problematic. I was thinking,
'Cause you
if
care
I'm
about
weighing
her.
two characters, I'd much rather have her survive on a
Yeah.
personal
that's
investment.
kind of my
It's
thing
tough.
too.
That's tough. Like from a story perspective, like we want to preserve the character that we're more attached to. The problem being that she is one of the only female
is.
characters.
And
so
I like
that's
Hawkeye a
hard.
hell of a lot more walking out of this than I did walking in.
Yeah.
He's really good in
Yeah.
this movie.
He is.
I also think that and this is with Endgame review, but like, I think there was too much flack given. I don't think in Ultron, I think the timing of the conversation is unfortunate. I don't think she was implying I am a monster because I'm sterilized.
I don't think so either. I think it may have been an editing issue or something.
Yeah,
because
could
I think a lot of people took that way out of context.
I think she was trying to say, like, I was trained to be a killer.
Yeah.
I was trained to lose, like, all
It's a
emotion towards
list.
other people. I was sterilized as part. Like, they've completely transformed me completely.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the actual presentation of that is what upset people because it sounded like it was this, therefore this, but I think it was like this and this and this and this and this, therefore this.
No, the director should have been aware.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's what they were trying to do. I also
No.
read a thing talking about how this was the most sexist movie of all time, where they were like, Nebula, all these so like, oh yeah, ScarJo just wants to kill herself for her family of boys. And I was like, all right. Also, the family of boys are so uncaring about women that they don't even notice. One of their primary females comes back with a different hand. It was metal, and they didn't even notice. And I'm thinking,
Okay. I mean,
it's
the
not.
extremists are going to scream the loudest.
Yeah.
And so you're going to see stuff like that.
Well, it's hilarious
But-
because they show her unwrapping her hand when she comes back, like they actually addressed it.
They had a lot going on,
Anyway,
I must
so-
say. I don't know if I would have noticed that either.
Yeah.
I think that's silly, but I think that people are just reacting strongly because of the things we already mentioned.
And the internet's an echo chamber. I have one
It is.
final issue.
Okay.
Maybe there's some other ones, I don't know. And just to let the listener know, like, we love this movie overall, to varying degrees, whatever, but like,
Yeah.
we thoroughly enjoyed this. So even if we spend more time talking about these, it's because we can gloss over the cool stuff. Like, we'll talk about Cap picking up the hammer. That was fucking
Oh.
sweet. But I don't have as much to say about that because it's just awesome. Watch it.
Yeah.
The last issue I have is time travel. It's
Me
not
too.
entirely clear how almost any of this works. They even go to the trouble of defining some of the terms in the movie in ways that could make sense and then break their own
And they
rules
break
by
them.
the end.
Well,
And time travel is always thorny, and Lord knows we have a D&D show on this very network that might end up having the same problems by the time we're done. Who knows? But it just seems weird to me that we go through all this and then Cap seemingly breaks half the rules when he goes back at the very end.
No, but Chris, the director, said after the movie, they said in an interview that they did this thing and it was another
I saw the interview.
Now, to be fair, before the directors came out, which I agree is annoying, I thought I gave them more credit than maybe I should, but I said, he's there, but according to the movie, this shouldn't be able to happen. But we don't know for a fact that he went back in time and has lived in this dimension the whole time and now is like back at this point. We don't know for a fact that he didn't use the doohickey after living a whole life in an alternate dimension, came back here. It sure seems like that's something the directors could have addressed, though.
I feel
even if he did the pad, what if he shows up on the pad?
Pad solves almost all of it.
And it's like they wanted the dramatic moment of him being on the bench.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, but you have to do a little bit of work.
Yes.
And you didn't.
Yeah.
And so it it's very likely a future thing will address that he used a PIM particle from another dimension to come back after he lived his life. For one, it's kind of too late because we can't judge that in the context of this film. And two, it's like, why didn't you? Don't make us care about the rules that you establish if you're gonna seemingly break them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We know he had extra PIM particles. He took 4.
He had 2
They presumably
extra.
used 2. Him and Stark. So that's certainly a possibility. And like you said, it's weird to build all that up and then just have him show up on the pad. You can still do some kind of like behind him reveal where he looks old and everybody goes, oh shit, except Bucky, who clearly knew about it in advance.
Yeah.
Because he was not shocked, unlike everybody else.
Yeah, I actually had a problem with that until I realized, like, wait, he's like so not so. So either he just knew Cap so well that he knew that's what he was gonna do,
Or they talked about it.
or they talked, or maybe they even had some weird interaction.
Or Bucky's an emotionless husk and he feels nothing anymore.
No, but we know that's not true.
No.
Yeah.
In the film, they make it seem like he just knows Cap so well that like he knows.
Yeah.
And you almost get that when he's like, "Don't do anything stupid till I get
that's
back."
right.
And it was like this. You know he's not coming back. I knew Cap wasn't coming back. I didn't know exactly that he was going to be old. I had a feeling, though, I will say. But there was a chance I thought he might not come back at all.
Yeah.
At all. He just stays in the past. That probably would have solved some problems, too. But
go ahead, Chris.
I was just to say, I've also seen some people take issue with the idea that he basically ruined Peggy's life for his own selfish reasons. And it's like, first of all, even if it is the one from the same dimension, that's probably not true. And based on their own rules, it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
It should splinter off into its own alternate dimension where he can just do whatever because her life wouldn't have been the same.
Yeah.
So that part isn't what bothers me. To me, it just felt kind of out of character. I mean, the whole first part of the movie is like, he's trying to like help people move on, and he was even saying like some people have a harder time moving on than others, and we know he struggled for moving on from Peggy. We know very much so, but like it felt kind of like in contrast to the entire film that he would do this.
I agree with you to a point, but only to where if indeed he is coming back to this dimension with the PIM particles, he knows that this is all an alternate thing that doesn't really matter. He gets to live out his life without having to worry about Hydra or other bullshit, and it doesn't actually matter because he's going to return to the Alpha timeline or whatever the hell you want to call it. So it's a little weird, but it doesn't strike me as like he's being selfish or off kilter.
I mean, I think he is being selfish, but
for the maybe he's earned it,
that's kind of my thought too. Is like I think part of the movie is about moving on, and he hasn't been able to do that, or he hasn't allowed himself to do that, and then he finally does, and he gets to go live the life he wants. I thought it was really sweet.
And I think so. A couple things. Even if it's a scenario where like he could have manipulated time travel to prevent a lot of this stuff. Sure, you can say what you will, but I appreciated the idea that someone who has been selfless, literally identified by that their whole life, would finally want to do one act that would allow them to like live their life finally, not living in service of others. And I liked how his journey in a lot of ways mirrored Iron Man's, selfish versus selfless. And then they inverted each other.
Yeah, they dovetail.
Cap, finally lives his own life. Iron Man makes the sacrifice play that they reference in Avengers 1.
Yeah, I think that's like poetic in a way, and I think that like narratively it makes sense. I just personally found it kind of hollow. I didn't really find it very sweet. I don't know why. And maybe because it's an alternate dimension, and so it's like it almost feels like it doesn't matter because I'm not seeing it. I don't really have any attachment to this alternate dimension. You know what I mean? Like, to me, that's not really what's real.
They're dancing for 3 seconds.
Yeah,
I really liked it as someone who was did not give a shit about Captain America. And if you gave me a list of 3 characters I found the most annoying from comic books, it would probably be like Superman, Captain America, and another like Mary Sue person. And the movies have just done such a great job of recharacterizing him. That relationship was like almost 20 films ago, still one of their best. Like, people miss Peggy. It was also the only TV series that they like acknowledged in this film, which I thought meant something too. Like Agent Carter,
cool.
They brought like in a couple Jarvis and whatever. Like, because they're like, we care about that one. We like Haley Atwell.
But there's no Coulson.
There's no Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. There's no... Obviously, there would not be any of the Defenders. They're all canceled now. But, like...
No Daredevil, any of that stuff. Just...
They focus on her for a reason. She's very popular. And so to have this idea where he went back and finally got to live the life after, he should have been dead, really. Like, he made the sacrifice play in 1940, whatever, and miraculously lived. And now he has a chance to... do like what if I was okay with it, and I did think it was sweet.
But Bucky,
yeah,
Bucky and Falcon are all he has left. If you consider that if he's rekindled his friendship with Tony, it would be one of the closest people to him. He's gone, and Scarlet's gone. Well, Black Widow's gone.
Yeah, I did that too.
Yeah, Black Widow's gone. I mean, they've been close, especially ever since Civil War, and even earlier in this film, they're 2 of the anchors for whatever's left of civilization. I think the Cap stuff is debatable there. The biggest issue I have with the whole thing is they kind of just yada him returning the stones. And there's a couple of critical issues with how that's even possible, no matter how strong Cap is. Well, Soul Stone specifically.
And so how does that work? And also, if the Red Skull is still there, now I don't know if he is. Once he like releases it, does he also get released?
Who knows?
But like, they had another confrontation. Like, oh hey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, wait. So the stones had to be returned the exact moment they were taken, and in the exact form that they were originally taken in. So a lot of them were in stone form. How did any of this happen? I am baffled. I have no idea. Like, they definitely hand wavy it away. They're like, it's cool, but Peggy's here.
And you understand it because it's 3 hours already, over 3 hour movie.
I don't want to know.
Yeah.
But like I do it seems like it's a lot like. If this series was starved for telling compelling stories, which it's so not, that could be a movie on its own, easily.
I would watch him
Cap's
going back
journey
through that.
To go back to each Soul Stone, that would actually be
and then actually spending maybe 15-20 minutes in Peggy era, alternate whatever, to spend time with her and build that back up a little bit. I would watch all that. I'd watch Cap 4.
Yeah.
No, and if it was a comic book, we probably would get that. In real life, we have the unfortunate issue of contracts and actors aging or wanting out or whatever. It does seem like, there's so much potential. I actually think, though, that we have these Disney Plus TV series, and I feel like all of them potentially could stem from that last thing in the movie of him going back in time. We have, or related, Loki. I'm sure his series is going to be, he takes that stone, and that messes with shit.
I love that, by the way.
I loved it.
It's great.
And you're like, Tom Hiddleston is he's such a good actor. He did more with his eyes in that scene, just looking at the thing and his reactions with his mouth bound than a lot of actors in other movies do, with all the screen time in the whole film and all the speaking lines.
Nearly made me forgive for what happened in the previous film. Yeah. Because that was honestly, they were just like, by the way, boom. And I was like, oh, excuse me. I kind of expected it, but it was cool to know that he's off doing some crazy shit in a different dimension.
Yeah, so that's one. We have a series about Falcon and Winter Soldier, which everybody's like, oh, that's a prequel, taking place, whatever. And it's like, well, no, clearly not. That's going to now be the new Captain America and his new sidekick, Bucky. So that's awesome.
It's very pure and good.
Wanda, I'm assuming, is going to be also a sequel, something with Vision.
Give her her own movie?
Yeah, she's kind of directionless, but you could easily give her one.
The name of the show is WandaVision.
Yeah. So you assume we're going to have, but I don't know how you undo that either, but there's possibilities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it possible? Did they do enough legwork about Shuri like backing up parts of Vision into the computer? Yeah, probably in the Infinity War.
Oh.
That's
doable.
right. I forgot about that.
We don't know how it
Yeah.
resolves.
They seem to do enough to where they could factor this in later.
Yeah.
So.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, anyways, all the TV shows are like centered around this thing. So I think it's right for storytelling. But yeah, it's like, oh, he's just gonna go do that. Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I'm sure
Yeah.
it went well.
And there's some other spots in the film where they kind of gloss over some stuff. And again, for 3 hours, I can understand why. That one is such a monumental one that it's just kind of
Yeah.
like, oh, you just did it, huh? Well, if that's so easy, why don't we just beat Thanos that way?
Now,
Yeah.
well, Chris, you said you had an issue with Nebula, and I missed the very first one. It's just not
Yeah.
fighting herself, and I wanted to know what you meant. Like, at what part?
Like when the past Nebula is basically like, cool, I'm just going to take this head plate and take off. And she has to understand what the ramifications that are going to be. There's no resistance there, and then not really any attempt to tell anybody else either.
Yeah, well, I think the biggest plot hole of the film, of the entire film, with time travel and all of that. So you run to the thing to calm to Natasha and Jeremy Renner, Hawkeye. Thanos is coming.
Nailed it.
Fine, okay. I get why you wouldn't want to go there. You have this goddamn thing on your wrist. In all the time it takes them to, and this is why they cut. They cut scenes. You see her beaming up. The very next scene, she's getting the shit beat out of her. The reason they made that cut is because there is no reason she would not have entered the thing and just gone back to the present in that time.
Yeah.
There's none. And the movie is predicated. They have to get the big bad in the final to go to the present. So that is a plot forced stupidity. But it was
Yeah.
so glaring to me in all that, like, you see the ship being beamed up and I'm like, she has so much time to just boop, 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 boop.
Yeah.
War Machine did
Yeah.
it in like 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
that's
that
true.
still sticks out to me as like, there's no good reason. They don't even try to like, I was even thinking once it starts being beamed up, she could like get jostled, hit her head. It's not great, but it at least sort of addresses it.
Right.
Yeah.
So they don't even do that. It's just
Yeah,
like,
it was
why?
kinda
Why
lazy. And it's like they knew it was like not good. Like you were saying, they were like, yikes, let's just pretend nobody saw that.
This is the shit that stops me from writing. Is like I will identify these plot holes in my writing. I'm like, well, I have to stop because I can't fix it.
Yeah.
And then I see other people's like, you just got to keep going because nobody cares. The writers don't care. The audience doesn't care. Nobody cares. Just write your shit. But it bothered me.
It's maddening. Yeah, I know.
Yep. And that is the end of part 1 of our Avengers Endgame review. Part 2 will be next week. Even if we'd wanted to just post one supersize episode, it was actually too long because of the file size it creates. It won't let us upload things of that size, so we split it into 2. Next week's show will be all about the positive, I promise. Just a couple more like little nitpicky things. But overall, I mean, again, we really liked the movie, and you'll find out what our scores are and all that jazz next week. As always, thank you for watching/listening. You can find us at our website, objectionnetwork.com, on social media at Team Objection, that's Facebook and Twitter, on youtube.com/objectionnetwork for videos 7 days a week, and finally you can send emails to the show to objectionnetwork@gmail.com. See you next time.